Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You, an interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much, as always, for joining. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Kevin Palmieri to discuss the work that he's currently engaged in on self-belief and self-worth. And to provide a bit of an overview about Kevin, he starts his bio by stating that some people find rock bottom. And then he found out that rock bottom had a basement, and that's quite the way to start it. I have to say, it certainly got my attention. In his mid-20s, he had it all. He had a beautiful girlfriend, a high-paying job, sports car, dream body, but still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed debating suicide. After his rock bottom moment, he went all in on holistic self-improvement, determined to overcome his anxiety, depression, and to finally live the life he'd always dreamed of. Kevin now hosts a podcast that impacts hundreds of thousands of people across the world, helping to grow it to a $1 million revenue business with over 1,700 episodes published thus far. Kevin has also given hundreds of speeches, trainings, and coaching sessions to people all over the world. The main thing that changed was Kevin. He focused on learning what he didn't know, unlearning a lot too, and then he noticed a life shift. He believes in a heart-driven but no BS approach to holistic self-improvement and looks forward to teaching even more people about what it really takes to get to the next level. Wow, quite the bio, Kevin. Thank you very much for joining me. How are you today, my friend?
I am doing very well. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I have looked this morning and I saw us on the calendar and I was super excited because Gary and I had the opportunity to connect before we did this. So a very heart-driven human. I am a huge fan of you and I am excited to chat.
Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome.
So let's start with some of the harder stuff, if you don't mind.
Of course.
And you mentioned that you found out that rock bottom had a basement. Can you describe that moment and the emotions that were associated with it?
Yeah, so my initial rock bottom moment was when I think I was 25. And as you alluded to, my girlfriend was a model. I had just competed in and won a bodybuilding show, so I was quite literally in the best shape of my life. High paying job, sports car, new apartment, great friends, all of the things that you would assume that would make somebody super happy, super fulfilled, and super healthy, I guess would be the best way to put it. But that was not the case. I was very depressed. I was very anxious. I was afraid of my own shadow. I was antisocial. I was riding the struggle bus. I was really struggling at that point. My girlfriend ended up leaving me because I just was struggling so bad that I was struggling to pour into myself, never mind into another human. So she left me, as she should have, and that was my initial rock bottom. Who's going to love this broken, depressed, anxious version of Kev? I don't love me. I don't know if I can expect anybody else to love me.
Yeah.
I fell into the trap, Gary, of assuming that I just hadn't made enough money yet. I think many of us experience that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe I just haven't made enough money yet. And if I cross a certain mark, a lot of this internal stuff that I'm dealing with will go away. So the next year, I got promoted at my job, and I worked in an industry called weatherization. Most people don't know what that means. We would go into buildings and make them more energy efficient. That's what we did.
Right.
So the next year, I got promoted to a foreman, which means I'm running jobs. I'm traveling all over the place. I'm spending weeks at a time in other states because we had these contracts in other states. But my goal was to make as much money as humanly possible that year. So this is all in alignment with what I want to accomplish. So fast forward to the end of that year, I had spent 10 months living on the road. Every single week, a different state, a different job, a different town, a different hotel. Got to the end of the year, I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And it was like, woohoo, this is it. When I open this final pay stub, all this internal junk is going to go away. We're going to be fine. Open my final pay stub, and I still felt the same. I had some financial abundance, and there was certainty associated with that, 100%. I will not negate that. But I was no more confident. My self-worth was no different. I didn't believe in myself anymore. I didn't love myself anymore. I didn't trust myself anymore. So I realized that for most of my life, and especially that year, I had lived unconsciously.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have no idea. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So that year, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And that's where all of this started. I want to have cool conversations, deep conversations with deep people. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But as you know, in the beginning, there's not exactly a line out the door of people saying, "Hey, Gary, I'd love to give you money for your great ideas on this
Yeah.
podcast." So I fell in love with podcasting. As I fell out of love with my job, I already reached the pinnacle. I traded in a year of my life to get there. I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job sites early. I start showing up late. And every time I would pack my bag and get ready to leave, I would be homesick. I would be homesick before I even left. And it would just get worse and worse as the days progressed, me being 6 hours, 10 hours, 16 hours away from home. So eventually, I was working in a hotel. I was working in another state and I was staying in a hotel. And my alarm clock went off at 5:15, 5:30 in the morning. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots as I had done 1,000 times before. And that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one is saying you're stuck here forever. I didn't go to college. I didn't have a higher education. I got lucky to get this job. There's no way I'm ever going to make money like this again. If you did leave, what would your friends say? You're the most successful person in your friend group. There's a lot of significance that comes with that. What would your family say? I'm the most successful person in my family for sure. What are they going to say about that? And then the loudest thing that I was hearing was, what are you going to do? Are you going to be a podcaster? That's what we're going to do? That's going to be our plan B? That doesn't seem like a very realistic plan B. And it was in that moment where I thought to myself, well, if I was just to take my life, I would take my problems with me. And that was the rock bottom basement. It doesn't get much lower than that. Luckily, I had a really good friend who's now my business partner who I felt safe enough to text. We had a conversation. He gave me some really good perspective. And then 3 or 4 months later, I ended up leaving my job and then becoming a very broke entrepreneur, trying to figure out how to do the things that we're doing today. So that's kind of the journey of how we got at least out of the job and then started podcasting.
Incredible. There's so much to unpack there, just in terms of the actual journey to get you there. The baggage that you were collecting consistently as you were moving forward in your journey to get you to that point. I love the analogy of the 10 TVs all on different channels, some of them saying some things, some of them saying other things, but you accumulated a lot of experience, and some of that didn't really truly serve you the more that you hung on to that to get to that spot. So what was the pivotal moment that made you realize that like holistic self-improvement was a thing for you? You had the conversation with your friend. It still took, a fair amount of time, 2, 3, 4 months to get out of your employment, to get yourself an opportunity to start your genuine journey in entrepreneurship. What was that pivotal moment where you realized there was another way?
Yeah, I think it was after I left my job. At the time, we were just having deep conversations. So the podcast was called the Hyper Conscious Podcast. I want to know everything about myself. That's my goal. I want to know everything. And then as I became more aware of me and my patterns and my history, I started to realize that every time I went all in on one thing, everything else crashed and burned.
Yeah.
When I was a bodybuilder, I was in the best shape out of anybody I knew, but my mental health was terrible. It was really bad. I also had a very bad habit of falling deeply in love with somebody and then abandoning my friendships and my goals. I had a bad habit of that. The year that I tried to go make the most money, I didn't have any relationships. Really, I was never home. And my mental health for sure, and physical health to a degree, was taking a hit. So it was really the fact that I looked back at all the patterns that I had made the mistakes of making, and my business partner had a very similar story. He and I are very, very similar, where we went all in on one thing and everything else kind of crumbled. And then it became the understanding that I don't want to be single and wealthy. Or even worse, I don't want to be in a terrible relationship and wealthy. I want to be a good partner. I want to be a good business partner. I want to be a good leader. I want financial abundance because I think it'll allow me to help more people. I also want to be in really good shape because fitness and having a strong, capable body is something that I really value. So I think ultimately it got to the place where I realized I value deeply meaningful relationships with a very small group of people. I want to make sure I'm good at that. I value fitness and health. I want to make sure I'm good at that. And I value money because I think money is an opportunity to buy choices. And the more money I have, the more money I can give to people to help them. So it became an understanding of the things that I valued, and then a recognition that I am willing to make the commitment to try to get really good at all of those, regardless of how challenging slash long it takes.
Yeah, I love that, and it sounds like a journey, like a genuine journey that you were on, and throughout that journey, there's likely mini or micro aha moments where you just take that and say, that's going to serve me, I'm going to use that. That's not going to serve me, I'm going to discard that. And then you get to that spot where you have these three pivotal things where you say, this is who I want to be. Is that fair to say that that's the case or was there a major aha moment for you at any point for those three things?
No, no, it was very much that. It was, I'm a bodybuilder. I like fitness.
Yeah,
Like, okay, cool. I don't want to get rid of that.
yeah,
It was really that. It was, you've gone all in on all these other things and you've gotten really good results, right? I won a bodybuilding show. I made six figures. I had some pretty good relationships. So I was okay at the things that I was doing, but I realized that oftentimes I would abandon two goals to get one.
yeah,
And it just got to the point where it seemed unsustainable to keep doing that. And I felt most fulfilled when I was doing all three.
yeah.
That was a big piece of it too, is when I actually started to feel what fulfillment was. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it felt like. That became another suggestion that I was on the right path.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. So, can you explain what holistic self-improvement is, what it means to you?
To me, it means leveling up in your life by leveling up your health, your wealth, and your love. So, health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, right? Not knowing why you're insecure about certain things, making sure you have a strong, capable body, just trying to improve yourself, whatever that means to you. Everybody's improvement is different. Wealth, how do you make your money? What do you do with your money? And how are you setting yourself up for your future? But that also connects to self awareness. Do you know where your money mindset comes from? Money blocks, that type of stuff, right? That's a big piece of it. And then love, self love, and then the love of the relationships closest to you.
Yeah,
It's really becoming aware of all of those and then figuring out what are the habits to make sure that all of those are trending in the right direction. And oftentimes, I'll go on business podcasts and they'll ask about how does it connect? How does the business connect to life? And I always say, well, a lot of people track things in business or they track things in fitness. Imagine if you tracked everything in your life.
yeah,
The deeply meaningful moments you have with your partner, that's love. The amount of days a week you meditate, that's health. The amount of money in your bank account and how much you're making and how much you're spending, that's wealth. So you can see that when you track those things, it starts to paint a picture of, okay, there's health, there's wealth, and there's love. And then that's kind of how we control the rate at which each of those grows ultimately.
yeah. It so resonates with me a lot of the times on podcasts or blogs or basically if anybody gives me an opportunity to speak about anything, quite honestly, talk about the power of data and the what you can do with the information once you have it. And there's a level of consciousness that certain people that are in the growth industry, that are in the growth mindset, they have a thirst for knowledge. They have a thirst for, those tracking items that you were talking about there. How does it feel when this is happening? Why do I act and react like that? What are my
Mm.
motivations in and of the situations that I'm in? And this accumulation of data, comes with a deep curiosity to understand, why did that feel good? Why did that feel a little bit icky? Why did that feel awkward? Why did that feel bad? Why did that make me feel a little bit sad? And a lot of times we have such a back to back to back life that you kind of mash them all together and you kind of go, you know what, that was an okay day. I'll try and do a little bit better tomorrow. And you don't dissect it enough to a point of saying, you know what, I need this absorption time. I need this opportunity to give myself the best circumstance to be able to digest what's happened, to make sense of what's happened, to understand what my next best step is, and then move forward. And I think that's a key differentiator, Kevin, honestly, with people that are genuinely in on their own growth and the opportunities and uncomfortableness that will go with that, and the folks that are that are kind of coasting. And I don't mean that to sound like it's simple, but they're just kind of doing what they always do at the
Yeah.
same time.
Well, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to take a moment. I'm convinced of this, at least this was my experience. There were times during my growth where I would have a moment where I would say, I don't know. I can't get to the truth of why I'm thinking what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think your brain has a safety mechanism where it says, nah, you don't have to dig any deeper. You shouldn't dig any deeper.
Yeah.
And I always try to sit with that and say, that's not real. There's an answer under there. I have to find the answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes that answer is hard and it's triggering and it's scary and it's a mirror image of something you're not ready to see yet. 100% understand.
Mhm.
But me digging for those answers has created a lot of the knowledge that I have today. Wisdom, I don't know. I'm weird when it comes to that word. I don't know if I want to use wisdom because I don't know if I know anything. I know stuff about me.
Yeah.
But a lot of it has been having very deep conversations that are uncomfortable and wanting to run in the opposite direction, but just not doing it.
Yeah.
And then understanding, to your point, what is my path to absorption?
Yeah.
Because everybody's is different. Maybe you go for a walk and you just think.
Yeah.
I reflect. That's for me when I'm doing really well in life or I'm really struggling, I look back because it helps me understand what's actually real in this moment. That way I don't lose sight of, Kev, yeah, you had a bad day, but you're quite literally living your dream.
Yeah.
Let that sink in because it takes time for that to sink in. And then it's also very easy to lose sight of that, unfortunately. It's easy to lose sight of gratitude.
Yeah. And not everyone is doing that. And I think that's one of the key lessons that I've learned during my journey, my whole life journey, but certainly when I've made more of a conscious effort to be in the growth space. You know, that those you mentioned, I only know me, I don't really have wisdom, but your ability and your persistence and consistency and continuing to have those conversations with yourself to say this works for me, that doesn't work for me, this has worked and it's a bit inconsistent, whatever that looks like, that is wisdom that you can impart on someone else to say, I don't know where your journey is. However, let me tell you what works for me. And you get those opportunities for little sparks and other people where they kind of go, oh, I haven't really thought about that. Actually, I usually get these little epiphanies when I'm driving, when I'm reading, when I'm walking, when I'm exercising, you know, whatever that looks like as well. So it's not the forcing, do this and you will succeed. Here are some things that might resonate with you. And if not, they might at least they can be discounted and then you can focus on other things that might serve you at some point in the future.
Yeah. I always say filter anything I say through your own personal filter and see what lands and see what doesn't, because some of it hopefully will land. That's the ultimate goal. But some of it also won't. And here's the truth, it shouldn't. Maybe it's not right for you right now. Maybe you're past that or you're not at that, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think that I just mentioned briefly there was, consistency and commitment. And through everything that you've shared thus far, Kevin, it's a case of it sounds like you're very consistent, you're very committed to what you're doing. What strategies have helped you maintain those qualities from the early days, the more difficult days, if I could say, if I could use that label,
Mm-hmm.
to today?
Yeah, one of the big things is I have someone on this journey with me. So there's something about the accountability that comes with having a business partner.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I don't want to do the episode, Alan is there waiting for me. It's the old gym analogy. If you don't want to go to the gym, you wake up, you say, I don't want to do it today, but I know Amy's going to be there waiting for me. Or I know Steve's going to be there waiting for me. You're going to go. You will do more for other people than you'll do for yourself at times.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we don't miss is because there's two of us. There's double fail safes. That's one. Number two is public accountability. Our brand is self-improvement in your pocket every single day from anywhere on the planet, completely free. That's our brand.
Yeah.
It's in our branding. I can't not show up. It literally say I'm going to show up every day.
Yeah.
So that's a piece of it. Another piece of it is when you do something long enough, it becomes part of your identity. Yeah. I am a podcaster who does episodes every day. It doesn't resonate if I don't say that. Yeah. And then I think the last thing, maybe the thing that I think is very valuable, it would be valuable to me in the beginning, is there were many times, Gary, where I didn't know if I could succeed. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I was good enough, smart enough. but I always had the deep belief that if I could survive long enough to make this into something, it would be worth it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons a lot of us, myself included in many regards, lack consistency is because we do not believe the outcome is going to be worth it.
Yeah.
If it's not worth it, if the promise is not worth it, we're not going to pay the price for it.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to check in with. If you're not consistent with blank, ask yourself, well, if I did get the result from blank, would it be worth it? Or do I actually believe that I'm going to do it long enough to get the result? I think that's a really, really big piece of it. And then last thing, we started with, let's put it this way. We started doing something. And then when something got easier, we put more on the plate. And then when that got easier, we put more on the plate. So yeah, I was overwhelmed and I was broke and I was struggling and it was brutal. But every time it got a little bit easier, we put more weight on the bar. And then we said, all right, let's get strong enough to lift this. Now, 7 episodes a week is not hard.
Yeah.
Everything else, 7 episodes a week and everything else is super challenging. Yeah. But eventually that'll be easier, and then we'll raise the stakes and we'll raise the stakes. And I think that's how you increase your potential. So it's really a mixture of all of those things. And I'm super fulfilled in what I'm doing. I'm very fulfilled in podcasting and speaking and coaching. So it's a little bit easier maybe for me. Maybe there's less resistance than, say, somebody who wants to paint all day. If you can sit in front of an easel and paint for 8 hours, you have something I don't. And that might be your unique ability for extra consistency or extra commitment or discipline.
Yeah, I think the underpinning there in terms of the accountability is so key. And accountability, of course, means different things to different people. And, having that other human being, someone you like, someone you care about, if it's a banter type relationship where you say, I'll skip it today, and then you get your text messages blow up, they're like, where were you? Where were you? We were there, you weren't there. And, it's fun guilt, filth or something like that. I don't know if you want to call it that, but, to get yourself to that opportunity. And in terms of the, one of the other things I wanted to pick up on there, in terms of the worth itness, very poor English, I know, but, establishing, like, what does that actually mean to you? Is this worth it? Yes, I think it is. Can you explain that a little bit further? I'm not sure, because people don't, they just go, does it make me feel good? Is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? And I really felt a resonance with you there, because that's the exact situation that I'm in right now. I look at my calendar weekly and then every single day just to manage and account for my time and make sure that my relationship with time is the way that it should be for a given day. And I look at everything and I say, is that moving me forward? Is that helping me grow? Is that helping someone else? What's a means to an end? Not to sound like a mercenary, but just to make sure that there's intention and purpose in everything. And then explaining to myself, yes, this is a thing that I'm doing. It doesn't lead to a financial gain. It doesn't lead to an increase in reputation. It helps me grow. It helps me build those foundations. I love the analogy of putting more weight on the bar, the easier that it gets. So it's just establishing this criteria that you mentioned there: accountability, worthiness, consistency, application, and things like that, what it means for you. And it doesn't have to mean the same as someone else, but the more you start to be true and consistent with yourself, the more predictable you can become, the more you can start to measure consistently what type of style of progress that you're making. And then you can do something, back to what I was saying earlier, with that data. So what are some key habits that you've established and or evolved over time that have helped influence your mindset and your overall progress?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the very beginning, I literally had a flashcard. My business partner helped me with this because he had been doing it prior to me doing it. I had a flashcard that had 5 things on it. I don't remember the exact 5. I wish I could find the flashcards, but it was probably along the lines of track my bank account, learn for 30 minutes every day, connect with a member of our podcast community, exercise for 30 minutes. And then I remember one was fear chase. So fear chasing to us means intentionally doing something that scares you and then giving yourself credit for it. Yeah. That's where all of this started. Now we still track our finances every single day. We track our business finances every single day, 7 days a week. We track podcast listens every single day. I don't always do it on Sunday, but if not, I catch up on Monday. Yeah. I learn for 30 minutes every day. I try to exercise for 30 minutes every day. So you can see that's kind of under health and in business.
Mhm.
In my relationship, my wife and I play the gratitude game every night before we go to bed. And it's just one simple thing. Hey, Gary, I'm really grateful for the way that you showed up today and supported me when I was really struggling.
Yeah.
All right, just as an example.
Yeah.
I have something I track called proactive thoughtfulness. So I try to go through my day, and when I'm looking at my list, I'll see, okay, proactive thoughtfulness. That's a reminder for me to do something thoughtful that I just wouldn't think of because I'm going through my day doing business or running around like a maniac. So that's a piece of it. And then there's another one on there called Kitchen Man. So my wife hates dishes more than I do. So I take care of the kitchen. I do the dishes, I take care of the kitchen, I make sure everything's clean because that is good for her. It helps her mental health when we have a clean house, a clean kitchen, same. And there's less resistance for me to do it than for her. So those are a couple relationship things that I try to do every day. And it boils down to, let's just say in your intimate relationship, if you have one, there's 100 things you could do, but there's probably like 5 things that really move the needle.
Yeah.
Probably in fitness, there's 100 things you can do, but there's like 5 things you can do to really move the needle. Wealth, there's 1,000 things you could do, but there's probably 5 things you could do to really move the needle. That's the goal. Find the 5 things under each category. In the beginning, find 1 thing under each category, but eventually as you get more competent and it gets easier, then you can get to the point where you're kind of tracking everything.
Yeah. I do love that gratitude. That's something that I've been employing myself for that must be coming up in about 2 years now, maybe a bit less
Nice.
than that. And just the very last thing before, whether my partner and I are together or not, the very last thing is it's almost like a complete decompression of the day. Whatever feeling bubbles up, and then gratitude and gratefulness in and around that. It takes seconds, and
Mm-hmm.
what a way to fall asleep. It's much better than the alternative, the opposite of that, of saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It's going to be the same tomorrow," and getting that. So,
Yeah.
so in terms of your early stages, to what's sitting in front of me today, fear and confidence, it seemed to play a key component part of where you were at early in your journey. How did you learn to manage your fear, and how did that contribute to building your confidence?
I'll tell you, in the beginning, I went way too far. You hear people say get outside your comfort zone, but nobody ever tells you how far.
Right.
And I went too far. When I left my job, obviously I left all the income, and I think I had like $10,000 in savings. That was my safety net, and I thought that was going to last me a while. It didn't last me nearly as long as I thought. But Alan and I had opportunities to travel and learn.
Yeah.
And I was terrified of planes. I hated large crowds. I was terrified of that type of stuff. So I think in 2018, the year that I left my job, I think we traveled across the country, and I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I thought I was going to die. I'd never experienced that before. I didn't know what that was like. So I went too far outside of my comfort zone, and I think I faced too many fears too quickly, and my body fought back.
Yeah.
Then I started to understand, okay, right now, let's say I have a level 2 confidence. I have to face level 2, 2.5, 3 fears. I can't go face a level 10 fear because it's just too big. And if we think of it from like an exposure therapy thing, I need to expose myself to something just beyond what I'm currently capable of. So that really became the name of the game, is let me literally go out of my way to do something that scares me, but let me try to set it up so it's in a constructive amount, not a destructive amount. And then the more you do that, the more you understand that you've put yourself in so many different situations that some of the random situations that are going to happen in life, you're already kind of trained for. So you have more confidence. I think a lot of people have confidence confused. I think confidence is certainty. I just think, how confident am I that I can hop on a podcast episode and add value? Very high.
Yeah.
I have a lot of reps, which means I have a lot of certainty because I've done it before.
Yeah.
How confident am I that I could ride a unicycle right now? 0. I have 0 certainty. I've never done it. It could probably go horribly wrong. the only way for me to build confidence in that arena is to go try that thing.
Yeah.
So the more I went outside of my comfort zone and the more I experienced what life was like out there, and that it was safer than I thought and things usually went better than I expected, I started to become more confident.
Yeah.
And I also think the other thing is, as I've tried to become more competent and learn more and become more certain in Kevin, regardless of external outcomes, that's really helped my confidence as well. Because I realize, worst case scenario, Gary doesn't like me. This episode doesn't do well. I don't add any value. I can still do the next episode I have scheduled for later and try to do better. I trust me. I'm still valuable. I have more self worth. So as you work on yourself and you become more competent holistically, I think that brings a level of confidence too, because you understand today's a day. And if things go horribly wrong, there's still tomorrow. And even when they do go horribly wrong, they're usually not as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So it's that overall experience, I think, that makes you feel more confident, more certain, more in control.
Absolutely. And in genuine perspective, in and around what you're doing, that ability to be able to say, what does wrong look like? Here's my version of wrong, as you say. Typically, your version of wrong is an eight, on the scale of 1 to 10, and it turns out to be a three or a
Mm,
two or a one or something. You're kind of like,
yep.
many, many years ago, when I was teaching in the classroom, I was always very hyper focused on making sure it was the best experience that everyone ever had. I like to add comedy in, I like to add storytelling in. The curriculum still gets delivered as promised, but there's a journey that we go on, not for everyone. I appreciate and understand that, as the feedback told me now and again. But it was my way of providing and adding that value. And then one of the people from the university came in, one of the admin staff, and just said such a casual thing because the class went well. It was a corporate training class, so a business had come into the campus. Did it, she was just asking how did it go? I said, yeah, it was okay. It's always awkward when everyone from the same association or organization comes in because they have their own dynamics going on that then transfers itself to the classroom. And I'm like, okay, now these folks don't really get on with these folks. These folks just roll their eyes every time these folks say a thing. And I said, so the dynamic was it ebbed and flowed as the day went on, and it was a little bit weird. And she just said a super casual thing. Not every class is great. That was it. And
Mm.
and it was such a profound thing at the time because at the time I was like, yeah, that's true. And it wasn't until I was driving home and I thought, yeah, that's okay. And it was almost, and not that I was seeking it, but it was almost permission to say that it's never always going to be a 10. And then if I can look back and not beat myself up, but give myself an opportunity to say, what role did I play in this overall production? And was I my best self? And if not, why not? And if I reacted in a certain way that didn't serve me or the classroom, how can I learn about that? It's not as if I was getting anyone in a headlock and giving them a couple of rapid, rabbit punches or anything like that. It was just sometimes, in reflection, I would have thought, oh, you know what, I could have probably added a bit more educational value by doing this. So that those opportunities to genuinely reflect, give yourself the opportunity to have that perspective, as I say, gives you the best opportunity to proceed. And even then on the confidence part, if you have confidence in the fact that you know that you have no competence in a particular area, there's something freeing about that as well.
Mm.
I'm not very good at this, but I love doing it, and nobody seems to be too annoyed when I show up to play. So I'm quite happy doing that as well. And that energy, Kevin, it just breeds where people are like, why? Like, a guy on my football team says about another guy, not about me, but he could say it about me almost every week. You're the happiest worst player that I've seen, and it's so true because I love being around people. I love, exercising. I love doing something a wee bit different. I love being part of a community. So just, thinking about the things that you're doing that are serving you, that you enjoy. You don't have to be the best at it. You don't even have to be the worst at it. You could just be middle of the pack, and that's okay as well. So that brings me on to my next question. In terms of, you mentioned earlier, one of the affirmations or one of your your five motivational cards was reach out, and I know that you can't remember exactly, but it
Mm-mm.
probably was reach out to someone in the community to establish a new relationship or solidify an existing one. What advice would you give to the listeners in terms of being purposeful and appropriate and consistent and dedicated in networking and continuing to network?
Yeah, I hated networking. I hated the words networking. I had such a negative association with it. I changed networking to add value.
Yes, love it.
Every time I reach out to someone, my ultimate goal is to add value in some way, shape, or form and try to give more than I ask for.
Yeah,
And that's pretty much my philosophy when it comes to it. I I literally will message people and say, just let me know what I can do to help. You'd be amazed at how little people reach out and ask for help. It almost never happens. So
yeah,
I can just keep doing it. I'll just keep saying it and keep saying it and keep saying it. I have a message out to somebody right now who is, they're a podcaster and we're friends and we're buddies. And I messaged them and said, hey, I'm just checking in. How's everything going? And they said, it's mayhem and there's this going on, this going on. I said, what can I do to help? And they said, I don't even know yet. Maybe I'll send you an audio later. I was like, yeah, send me an audio later. Will they send it? Don't know. I
yeah,
don't know. But if they do, I'll send them an audio back and I'll give them absolutely everything I have and I will try to add value. So that's always kind of been my thing is my belief is the person who adds the value gets the business eventually. And even if you don't get the business, you get a positive relationship out of it.
yeah,
So that's kind of how I've operated. And yeah, at the end of the day, the most important thing is to be a good person. The second most important thing is to add value. And then the third most important thing is maybe eventually something comes of it. But if you go in with number three being number one, everything becomes a disheveled mess like LinkedIn messages. I
yeah,
mean, I'm sure we've all gotten I was doing this the other day. There is somebody in my DMs in LinkedIn that has messaged me 7 times and I haven't responded yet.
yeah,
Hey Kev, just checking in to make sure I saw your message, friend. I'm not interested. What are
yeah,
we doing? 7 messages?
yeah,
So I think that's a really good example where if you want to be different, if you want to set yourself apart from other people, just go add value and then let the chips fall where they may.
yeah.
It's most likely to fall in a positive direction. At least that's been my experience thus far, and that's my simple, very simple philosophy.
Yeah. I love that, and that really resonated with me back in the pandemic when, things were in lockdown, of course, and I don't know what it was like where you were, but we were in genuine lockdown here in Alberta in Canada. And I was just starting to think random. So as the day progresses, random thoughts will come in, especially if you have a wee bit of kind of downtime and you're doing some catch up or whatever it looks like. And then I started to get to a spot where if someone's name came into my head for whatever reason, and usually it was so nondescript and random, then I would just instantly pick up my phone, assuming that I had their contact details, and I would just text them, "How's it going?" And almost to a person, if it wasn't someone exactly within my circle, eventually they would be like, what do you want? Not quite as abrupt as that, but they would be saying, how can I help you? Like what's going on? You just crossed my mind and I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. And that was it. And then I would get this text message, almost like a shrug, like, oh, okay, so you don't want anything, you don't need anything, and you're not trying to sell anything. Okay, right, well, I'll talk to you again. And I loved doing that, and I've continued to do that. Just that these random, well, it's not actually random. I guess there's a reason, and you just never know who you're going to be able to add value to, how you're going to
Mhm.
affect people on a given day. It just might be that little spark that gets them out of a funk, that gives them inspiration to maybe do that to someone else at the same time. So networking, I guess, to sum that up, it comes in all shapes and forms.
Yes.
And if your colleague, your friend reaches out to you, great. If not, they know that you're there and they know that they can. And maybe at some point down the road they will. So your heart-driven but no BS approach to self-improvement.
Mm.
Elaborate.
Somebody, we gave a speech somewhere, I think, and I all again same thing. After a speech, if there's anything I can do to add value, DM me. I literally want you to follow me right now, or not follow me, but just DM me. Just DM me right now. Any
Yeah,
questions you got? somebody messaged me and said, "Hey, I feel like you guys are a really unique balance of heart driven but no BS." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, explain." And they said, "You're heart driven. You can tell that you care. You can tell that you're trying to add value. You can tell that you're trying to facilitate change. You can tell it's not just that you like hearing yourself talk, which at times I do, but probably not as much as people think. I just talk a lot."
Yeah.
They said the no BS thing is you guys are very truthful, like
Yeah.
to a sometimes a self-deprecating amount. You just kind of tell the truth.
Yeah.
I think that there was a time where there was toxic grind. So people were saying grind your face off. There was the toxic hustle culture.
Yeah.
But the opposite of the toxic hustle culture is the toxic do nothing and then hope things come to you culture.
Yeah.
We aim to be somewhere in the middle where most likely whatever you're trying to do is going to be really, really hard. It just most likely is. And life is also going to have a way of being hard too. Let's not sugarcoat that and let's not set ourselves up for failure. But it's also very important for you to spend time with your family if that's what you value. It's also very important for you to do the things that you value as a human being. So I think the best way to sum it up is truthfully, there are some people listening who need to work harder in order to accomplish their goals. You just need to grind more. There are also some people listening who are grinding too much at the expense of their own health, at the expense of their relationships, and at the expense of their future. That to me is what heart driven but no BS is. The truth for everyone is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Advice for Gary is different than advice for Kevin.
Yeah.
Advice for one podcast listener is different than somebody else. So we just do our best to tell what our version of our truth is. And then hopefully, again, filtering it through their own filter, they can figure out what to take from that.
Yeah. I love that. And I think one of the key things that I've learned over time, especially after I immigrated to Canada, which is almost 20 years ago now, is that the truth isn't very common, especially in a business setting, is my paradigm for right now, where, well, that didn't work out. I was a project manager. I say I'm a recovering project manager now. So, in project management, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations with people to say, what was that? You said you were going to get that done by Friday. You literally knew at the time that that's not the case. So that was a lie. Why would you do that? Why would you think that was going to work out? Help me understand that. And it was in a way, like I just said there, most of the time it was never, you're a letdown, you're a loser, you're a bad person, you did this intentionally. That was never going to get us anywhere. And it wouldn't even make me feel good for even a millisecond to try and get that frustration out of the way. It was more curiosity, which ended up, inspiring my journey to get here. But when you get back to those types and styles of conversations, the amount of times, and certainly in retrospect, but certainly in the moment as well, that you would see a bit of a light bulb coming on with someone where I would say, listen, that wasn't cool. That wasn't cool at all. And I'm going to tell you why. You said this, you did this, you didn't do that, you promised this. It's not my reputation. My reputation, people who know project management know that I'm at the mercy of a third party 90+% of my job. I'm there to manage the resources and do the very best I can. So I can explain away a delay that was caused by you. This isn't good for you. So I'd like to understand that a wee bit more. And those light bulb moments, Kevin, where they would kind of like, no one's ever called me on this BS before, and no one's ever actually articulated it in that way. And then you're forming a connection, and then all of a sudden the more difficult groups of parties or people on the project become your allies, because you could have thrown me under the bus there. You decided to have a conversation and not run up and down the hallways, fanfaring the fact that it was me that was at fault. You took accountability, you protected me, you helped me. How can I help you? And it was I loved those moments, and I kind of sometimes miss them, because it then sparked my understanding that that's just not very common. It's just not.
Yeah. Humility is unfortunately, it seems like a somewhat rare thing. And
Yeah.
I understand why. It's very hard to be humble when you're triggered. When somebody says something to you that like really affects you at your core, it's very hard to humbly take that, because humility is lack of ego. That's really all it is, lack of protector. So if you're triggered, your protector is going to jump up and you're going to say things, do things that you don't necessarily believe or actually want to say or do.
Yeah.
So that's a really big piece of it too. It's having the humility to say, yeah, you know what, you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But that takes practice.
Yeah.
And it takes somebody humble like you on the other end. I've had some project managers in the past that at old jobs, it was terrible. It was more, let me shout at you from the ivory tower about how you should do your job. It's like, you've never done my job. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I know you don't. That's a whole thing. You're not being humble with the fact that you don't know what my experience is like. Just like I need to understand that I don't know what your experience is like.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways. That's what communication is.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. What key advice or encouragement would you give to someone who currently feels like they are at or are heading towards their rock bottom? And what advice would you give them to help make the change?
Yeah, that one's always super challenging. I have a couple thoughts. One, sit down and write out what are your core values, what are your core beliefs, and what are your core aspirations. Your core values are, what do you believe in terms of, like, what are the things that you value? Do you value humility? Do you value consistency? Do you value work ethic? Do you value family time? What are the things that you value that you would like to surround yourself with more? What are your core beliefs? So what do you believe this life is about? What is it for? What is the point of all this? What are your beliefs as a human? And then what are your core aspirations? If you were very, very brave and courageous and you really wanted to write down what you really hope to accomplish with your time here, what would those things be? I think a lot of us, at least again, speaking for myself, one of the reasons I got to rock bottom and I got to my rock bottom basement moment was I wasn't very clear on the things that I wanted out of life.
Yeah.
I thought I was, but I traded in. I'm a very certainty driven human. I traded in a ton of certainty when I was traveling all the time. I'm somebody who loves freedom of time, freedom of schedule. I had none of that. I was in a hotel room. I couldn't go anywhere. So I traded in so many of my core values for my core aspiration of money. Oh, interesting. I was taking from one pile and putting in the other. No wonder why I ended up in a place that I didn't want to be. So that's one really good place to start, just getting familiar with that. And here's the second thing. Just because you don't know what you want to work towards does not mean you're not working on yourself. So if you feel lost, if you feel directionless, if you don't know where you aspire to go to, just start working on you. If you don't know where to put all your time, energy, effort, and focus, just put it on yourself and start with self-improvement, because who knows what's going to happen when you do that. You're going to be more clear on the things that matter to you, the things that you value, the things that you're good at, the things that you're learning. So that's probably the advice I would give, because yeah, I had the podcast and I kind of knew where I wanted to go. But one of the things that shifted the most for me was working on me. Even if it wasn't in a specific direction, it was just, let me shore up the human. Let me work on the vessel that we live this entire life through.
Yeah. Yeah, very powerful. What future goals or dreams do you have for your existing business and your podcast as you move forward?
Yeah, this one's always hard because it sounds absolutely crazy, and I completely understand. Our long-term goal is to have the most positively impactful self-improvement company on the planet. That's what we're playing for. That's why we do an episode every day. That's why we don't miss. That's why the business is set up the way it is. That's the ultimate goal, because I think when I started self-improvement and I started this journey, I didn't resonate with a lot of the people I was trying to learn from, because I could tell that they always believed in themselves.
Yeah.
And I could tell that they didn't get me. I could tell. Well, just don't care what people think. Doesn't work that way for me. I don't even know if I aspire to that, honestly. Just believe in yourself more. Yeah, I've spent decades trying to do it. I just couldn't figure it out. I don't know how to do it. Help me do it.
Yeah.
That's our belief, is that we can actually help people with that.
Yeah.
It's not here's how to be a high achiever and be a millionaire. Nope. It's how to improve your life little by little by little by little. So hopefully 5 years from today, the life that you have is completely unrecognizable from the life that you used to live. So yeah, that's the ultimate goal. And then for me personally, it's just keep getting better, a little bit better every day as a leader, a speaker, a husband, a business partner, a coach, a business owner, an entrepreneur, whatever, just be a good human being and make sure you never lose sight of that. Because if you lose sight of that, this whole thing was for nothing.
Agreed. Agreed. Kevin, where can the listeners find out more about you and your organization?
Just search Next Level University. We're on all the podcast platforms. All of our episodes are in 4K on YouTube as well. And then our website is nextleveluniverse.com. So university is the podcast, universe is the website. It's got everything you need to know if you are interested in anything that we do.
Wonderful. Kevin, I can't thank you enough for your time. This conversation has been so energizing. It's been absolutely dynamite, I have to say. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope this
Likewise.
is not the last time that we get an opportunity to chat.
I hope not. We will make sure it's not, based on what we were talking about and adding value. I'll continue stalking you and trying to add value to your life, Gary.
Agreed. So if I don't respond to you after 7 messages, you're going to get the hint, though, aren't you?
Nope. I'm gonna keep firing. No, yeah, of course. If you don't respond after the first one, I'll probably get the hint.
I would definitely respond 100%. Thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you.